I still remember the beeping of the hospital monitors. Lying there with metal pins in my leg and bandages across my chest, I kept checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for Heather to walk through that door. After 3 years together, and a ring on her finger, I thought she would be by my side during the worst moment of my life. Instead, on what should have been our anniversary celebration, I received a text that changed everything. Happy anniversary, failure. I'm done waiting for you to be successful. I stared at those words through pain medication tears, then noticed she had left her engagement ring on our dresser. That $6,000 diamond I had gone into debt for. I decided right then, if she thought I was a failure, I would show her success by selling her precious ring. Before I continue with what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit the like button if you have ever had to rebuild your life after someone walked away when you needed them most. And subscribe if you want to hear more stories about turning betrayal into triumph when life knocks you down. To understand the full impact of Heather abandoning me in that hospital bed, I need to take you back to the beginning of our story. I am Rocco, 32 years old, and before the accident, I worked as a structural engineer for a construction company in Chicago. I spent my days overseeing building projects, checking calculations, and ensuring everything we built would stand strong for decades. On weekends, I volunteered at a local shelter, building wheelchair ramps for elderly residents who could not afford them. My other passion was my motorcycle, a Harley-Davidson Street Glide I had saved 3 years to buy. I met Heather at a charity auction for the shelter where I volunteered. She was stunning in a red dress, confidently outbidding everyone for a weekend getaway package. When she won, she celebrated with a little victory dance that made everyone laugh. I was immediately drawn to her energy and approached her at the bar afterward. That was quite the bidding war, I said, offering her a glass of champagne. She accepted with a smile that lit up her whole face. I never lose when I want something. That night we talked for hours. Heather was a marketing director for a luxury cosmetics brand, traveled internationally for work, and lived in a high-rise downtown with floor-to-ceiling views of Lake Michigan. She was sophisticated in ways I was not, but she seemed charmed by what she called my authentic, down-to-earth nature. Our relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, we had keys to each other's apartments. By our first anniversary, we were discussing marriage. I introduced her to my close-knit Italian family, who embraced her immediately. Her parents were wealthy business owners in the suburbs, who seemed politely distant with me, but never outright unwelcoming. For our second anniversary, I took Heather to Michigan's wine country. Under a pergola draped with lights overlooking rows of grapevines at sunset, I got down on one knee and presented her with a diamond ring that had cost me $6,000 money I had borrowed against my 401k. Her excited yes, and the tears in her eyes made every penny seem worth it. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs I chose to ignore. Heather frequently complained about my career, suggesting I should be more ambitious. "You are so smart, Rocco. Why are you still just checking other people's work? You could be running your own firm by now." When I explained that I enjoyed the stability of my job and the time it allowed for volunteering, she would sigh disappointedly. As wedding planning began, the pressure increased. Heather wanted a destination wedding in Italy, with over 200 guests. The venue she selected cost $30,000 alone. When I suggested something more affordable, she compared me to her friend Jennifer's fiancé, who had surprised her with a $100,000 wedding budget. "Do you want me to have less than my friends?" she asked. "Do you want me to be embarrassed?" To please her, I took on extra projects at work, moonlighted as a consultant for a small architectural firm, and even picked up weekend construction jobs. I was working 70-hour weeks, exhausted, but determined to give Heather the wedding she deserved. My motorcycle rides, once my main stress relief, became limited to my commute, as every spare minute went to earning more money. Despite my efforts, the wedding fund grew slowly, while Heather's expectations expanded. She added a week-long honeymoon in the Maldives, custom-made bridesmaid gifts, and a designer dress that cost more than my first car. Each time I expressed concern about our budget, she would remind me that her parents had offered to pay an option my pride resisted, but was increasingly tempted by. The strain began to show in other areas of our relationship. Our conversations centered around wedding details and money. Our intimacy decreased as I often came home too tired for anything but sleep. Still, I believed we were just going through a rough patch. Once we were married, things would settle down. We would find our rhythm again. That belief kept me going, even as I watched our bank account dwindle and my credit card debt rise. The weekend before our third anniversary, we had our biggest fight yet over my refusal to ask her parents for a loan. Heather stormed out saying she needed space. I spent that Sunday working on a side project, hoping the extra cash would help smooth things over. I planned to make our anniversary special, to remind us both why we had fallen in love in the first place. That was the plan, at least until a drunk driver ran a red light and changed everything. I do not remember the impact. My first memory after the accident is a paramedic leaning over me, asking my name. I remember trying to speak and tasting blood. The pain hit next, overwhelming and all-consuming. They told me later that the drunk driver's SUV had T-boned me at 45 miles per hour, sending my motorcycle skidding 60 feet down the asphalt with me tumbling behind it. The damage was extensive. Compound fracture of my right femur, 3 broken ribs collapsed, lung dislocated shoulder, and road rash, covering 30% of my body. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive, though lying in that hospital bed connected to machines and drowning in pain, I did not feel particularly fortunate. My first coherent thought was of Heather. I asked a nurse to call her, providing her number from memory since my phone had been destroyed in the crash. The nurse assured me she had been contacted along with my parents who were driving in from Indiana. I settled back certain that Heather would arrive any minute, imagining how she would rush in tearful but relieved, ready to support me through recovery. Hours passed. My parents arrived, ashen-faced and terrified. My mother held my hand while my father spoke with doctors. Friends from work came by with a card already signed by the entire office. My buddy Mark brought my laptop and some clothes from my apartment. But no Heather. She's probably stuck in meetings, I told my concerned mother. You know how her boss is about her being available on demand. Mom nodded, but the worry in her eyes matched my growing unease. I sent Heather text messages from my father's phone, each one a little more desperate than the last. 3 days passed. 3 days of surgeries, pain management, and the beginning of what promised to be a long recovery. 3 days of checking my father's phone every time it buzzed, hoping to see Heather's name. 3 days of making excuses to my family and friends about why my fiancée was not by my bedside. On the evening of what should have been our third anniversary, the text finally came, "Happy anniversary failure. I'm done waiting for you to be successful. This accident is the last straw. Don't contact me again." I read those words over and over, convinced there must be some mistake. This could not be the woman I had planned to spend my life with, the woman who had cried tears of joy when I proposed, the woman who had nursed me through a bad case of flu just months earlier. But as reality sank in, the physical pain in my broken body was overshadowed by a deeper anguish. She was leaving me because I had been injured, because I could not work, because I could not fund her dream wedding, while lying in a hospital bed with pins in my leg. My mother found me sobbing, the phone still clutched in my hand. I could not speak, could only show her the message that had shattered my world alongside my body. The look on her face shifted from confusion to a rage I had never seen before. "That spoiled, heartless girl," she whispered, pulling me carefully into her arms, mindful of my injuries. "You deserve so much better, my son." My father's reaction was even more pointed. He called Heather, immediately leaving a voicemail that started professionally, but quickly devolved into the kind of Italian-American expressiveness that would have been comical in any other situation. My friends were similarly outraged, offering to go to our apartment and gather my things before Heather could get her claws into them, as Mark put it. Through it all, I felt numb. The betrayal was too enormous to process, especially through the fog of pain medication and physical trauma. All I could think was 3 years. 3 years of love, planning a future, making sacrifices, all erased with a single callous text message on the day we should have been celebrating our love. The following morning, Mark arrived at the hospital, with several bags of my belongings from the apartment Heather and I had shared for the past year. His expression was grim as he set them down beside my bed. "Most of your clothes are here, plus your laptop charger, some books, and toiletries," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Your gaming console and TV are at my place for safekeeping." "What about my collection of signed first editions? The vintage motorcycle manuals?" I asked, suddenly concerned about possessions I had not thought about until now. Mark hesitated. "Some of your books are here, but I could not find the rare ones. And man, I hate to tell you this, but most of your valuable stuff seems to be gone already. Your apartment looks pretty empty." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "She took my things already." "It looks that way," Mark confirmed reluctantly. "But she did leave something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, placing it on my hospital tray. "The engagement ring. She just left it on the dresser," Mark explained. There was no note. Nothing. I stared at the box, remembering how I had saved for months, researched the 4 C's of diamonds, until I could recite them in my sleep, and finally selected this particular ring, because the oval-cut diamond reminded me of Heather's eyes. Now it sat abandoned, as worthless to her as I apparently was. "There's something else you should know," Mark said, sitting heavily in the visitor chair. "Something people have been keeping from you." The serious tone in his voice made me brace myself. "What is it?" "Heather has been seeing someone else. Her boss, Richard. It's been going on for at least 6 months. The revelation hit me like another collision." "How do you know?" "Lisa saw them together at Gibson's Steakhouse 2 months ago. Very intimate, definitely not professional. Then Tony spotted them coming out of a hotel downtown last month. We did not know how to tell you, especially with all the wedding stress and you working yourself to death." The pieces started falling into place. Heather's late nights at work events, the weekend marketing retreats, her increased criticism of my career and income, the constant comparisons to other more successful men. She had not left me because of the accident. She had already been gone. The accident had just given her a convenient exit strategy. As this realization sank in, something shifted inside me. The numbness gave way to a quiet, simmering anger. Not the explosive kind that makes you scream and break things, but the determined kind that makes you take action. I picked up the ring box. "You know what I am done being the victim here," I said to Mark. "This ring cost $6,000 that I did not really have. Maybe it's time it did something useful for me." Using Mark's phone, I called several jewelry buyers, explaining my situation and requesting quotes. Most offered around $3,000, citing the depreciation of second-hand jewelry. But one store, a family-owned jeweler in my neighborhood, asked more detailed questions about the ring's specifications. "Bring it in," the owner said. After I described the diamond's clarity and cut, "I think we can do better than half price." Mark took the ring to the jeweler that afternoon. 2 hours later, he returned with surprising news. $15,000, he announced, holding up a cashier's check. The jeweler said the diamond is actually much higher quality than most commercial engagement rings. "Apparently you got a great deal originally because it was an estate piece they were liquidating." I stared at the check in disbelief. $15,000, more than double what I had paid. Money that could help with my mounting medical bills, the rent I could no longer afford, and the income I would lose during my recovery. Heather never knew how valuable it really was. I said, a small smile forming for the first time since the accident. She just cared that it looked impressive to her friends. That evening, I posted a simple update to my social media. Sometimes life gives you unexpected gifts. Thank you to Morgan Jewelers for their generous purchase of a diamond that deserves to bring joy to someone who values true commitment. Number fresh start. Number silver linings. I did not name Heather or mention our breakup. I did not need to. Within hours, my phone exploded with messages from her. "You sold my engagement ring. That was mine, regardless of our relationship status. How dare you sell a gift you gave me? I want that money right now. My father will sue you for the full value, plus emotional damages." Each message revealed more of who Heather truly was, a person focused on possessions rather than people, on appearances rather than substance. I responded to none of them, instead using the block function for the first time in my life. The next day, Heather's mother called. Unlike her daughter, she sounded subdued, even embarrassed. "Rocco, I want to apologize for my daughter's behavior. We raised her to be ambitious, but never cruel. I am truly sorry about your accident and how she has handled this situation. Thank you, Mrs. Taylor," I replied, surprised by her kindness. "For what it is worth, I think you selling that ring was perfectly reasonable. It was a conditional gift, and she broke those conditions in the worst possible way." After we hung up, I felt a strange sense of validation. At least someone in Heather's family recognized how wrong her actions had been. That validation was short-lived. 2 days later, Heather appeared at my hospital room door with a man I recognized from company photos as Richard, her boss and apparent lover. She looked immaculate as always, but her expression was twisted with anger. "You think you can humiliate me and get away with it?" she demanded, striding toward my bed. Richard hung back near the door, looking uncomfortable. "I did not humiliate you," I replied calmly. "I sold a ring that was returned to me and posted about a positive financial transaction. Your name was never mentioned. Everyone knows it was our engagement ring. Now all my friends are asking questions, and my parents are acting like I am the villain here." Before I could respond, a nurse entered the room, alerted by the raised voices. "Is everything all right, Mr. Moretti?" "No," I said firmly. "These people are not welcome visitors. I am recovering from major trauma and do not need this kind of stress." The nurse nodded and turned to Heather and Richard. "I am going to have to ask you to leave immediately." "This is not over," Heather hissed as the nurse escorted them out. "You will regret this." But watching her walk away, I realized I already regretted just one thing: not seeing her true character sooner. The physical recovery from my accident was excruciating. I endured 2 additional surgeries to repair my shattered femur, each followed by days of pain so intense that even morphine provided little relief. Physical therapy sessions left me drenched in sweat and sometimes tears. Simple tasks like showering or going to the bathroom required assistance, stripping away any dignity I might have clung to. But the emotional recovery was equally challenging. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket as I faced not only the betrayal by the woman I had planned to marry, but also the uncertain future of my career. Would I ever be able to climb scaffolding again? Inspect construction sites? The doctors were optimistic about my eventual physical recovery, but vague about the timeline. Through it all, my support system proved invaluable. My parents temporarily moved into my new apartment, a modest 1-bedroom, that Mark had helped me secure near the rehabilitation center. My mother cooked Italian comfort food that tempted my non-existent appetite, while my father handled insurance paperwork and medical bills with dogged determination. Friends visited regularly, bringing books, movies, and much-needed laughter. The financial situation was dire. My health insurance covered much of the hospital stay, but left thousands in deductibles and co-professional payments. Disability payments provided only a fraction of my normal salary. The money from selling Heather's ring disappeared quickly into the void of medical expenses. 6 weeks after the accident, I received a letter that arrived like an unexpected life preserver. It was from James Turner, the man who had hit me with his SUV. He was sober now, having gone straight to rehab after being released on bail. "I cannot undo the harm I have caused you," he wrote in shaky handwriting. "But I want you to know that I have accepted full responsibility. My insurance company has been instructed to offer the maximum settlement without requiring you to fight for it. Additionally, I am enclosing a personal check to cover any expenses that insurance might not. It is not charity, Mr. Moretti. It is restitution." The check was for $20,000, an amount that brought me to tears. With this financial breathing room, I could focus on healing without the constant stress of imminent financial ruin. Physical therapy became the center of my existence. 3 times a week I worked with Damon, a former military physical therapist, who pushed me to my limits, but knew exactly when to ease back. The first time I stood unassisted, leaning heavily on parallel bars, but bearing my own weight felt like summiting Everest. The day I took 10 steps with only a cane was even better. Throughout this period, Heather continued her campaign of harassment, though less directly. Mutual friends reported that she was spreading rumors about me, claiming I had been reckless on my motorcycle, or that I had sold family jewelry that belonged to her. These stories found little traction among those who knew me, but they stung nonetheless. What hurt more was learning through social media that Heather and Richard had moved in together barely 2 months after our breakup. Photos showed them vacationing in the Maldives, the very destination she had selected for our honeymoon. She wore new jewelry that made her previous complaints about my financial limitations particularly galling. Yet as weeks turned into months, I found these revelations affected me less and less. My focus had necessarily shifted inward to the daily battle of rehabilitation and rebuilding my life from scratch. There was something clarifying about having everything stripped away, about being reduced to the most basic human functions, and slowly reclaiming them through sheer determination. 4 months after the accident, I returned to work, part-time, primarily handling design reviews and computer modeling that could be done from a desk. My company had been surprisingly accommodating, perhaps partly due to the goodwill I had built over years of reliable service. The regular income combined with the settlement money finally provided some stability. It was during this period that I began to reconsider my career path. The accident had shown me how fragile life could be, how quickly everything could change. Did I want to return to the same work that had left me feeling trapped and inadequate in Heather's eyes? Or was this an opportunity to redirect my skills towards something more personally fulfilling? I began exploring options for Comstof, architectural design, focused on accessibility, combining my engineering knowledge with my newfound personal experience of navigating the world with mobility limitations. I enrolled in an online course on universal design principles, studying during evenings when pain kept me awake. A chance conversation with Damon, my physical therapist, led to an unexpected opportunity. He mentioned that the rehabilitation center was planning an expansion, but struggling with architects who did not truly understand the needs of patients. They keep designing these beautiful spaces that would be nightmares for people actually trying to recover from physical trauma, he complained during one of our sessions. I could take a look at the plans I offered, give some feedback from both professional and patient perspectives. That simple offer evolved into a consulting role, which eventually developed into a new career direction that combined my technical expertise with my lived experience. For the first time since before meeting Heather, I felt genuinely excited about my professional future. 1 year after the accident that nearly killed me and the betrayal that nearly broke me, I sat across from Heather at a busy downtown restaurant. The meeting was not planned. I had been having lunch with colleagues when she appeared at our table alone, and looking very different from the confident woman who had once dominated my life. "Rocco," she said softly, "could we talk privately for a moment?" My colleagues exchanged glances, aware of my history with Heather. I nodded reassuringly to them before following her to an empty table near the window. "You look good," she said, studying me with an intensity that once would have made my heart race. The physical therapy must have worked well. It did, I confirmed, absently rubbing my right leg, which still ached before rainstorms but otherwise functioned normally. "How have you been, Heather?" She glanced down at her hands, and I noticed the absence of the large diamond ring Richard had given her, prominently featured in so many social media posts. "Not great, honestly. Richard and I broke up 3 months ago. Turns out I was not the first employee he had pursued, just the most recent." I nodded, unsurprised, but refraining from saying "I told you so." It would have been easy to feel vindicated, to relish her disappointment, but I discovered that satisfaction at another's misfortune was not something I wanted to carry with me. "I am sorry to hear that," I said honestly. "Breakups are difficult, especially when you realize you gave up something real for something that was never going to last," she replied, looking directly at me now. "I made a terrible mistake, Rocco. The way I treated you during your accident was unforgivable. I was selfish and shallow and scared. Scared of what I asked, genuinely curious. Of hospitals, of sickness, of having to be the strong one." She paused. "My father had cancer when I was a teenager. Watching him suffer, seeing my mother sacrifice everything to care for him, it left scars. When I got the call about your accident, all those memories came flooding back and I just ran. I considered her explanation, appreciating the honesty, but recognizing it as incomplete. That explains the first day maybe, not the cruel text or the months of silence that followed. She nodded, tears forming. By then I had convinced myself that you were better off without me, that Richard could give me the life I thought I wanted. It was easier than admitting I had failed you when you needed me most. A year ago, these words might have moved me to forgiveness, might have rekindled something of what we once shared. Now they simply provided closure to a chapter I had already finished reading. Thank you for telling me this, I said. I hope you find what you are looking for, Heather. She reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of mine. What if what I am looking for is a second chance with you? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down to see Lisa's name on the screen. Just arrived. Where are you sitting, Lisa? The nurse who had defended me against Heather and Richard in the hospital, who had slipped me extra pudding cups during late-night shifts, who had later become my friend confidant, and for the past 4 months, the woman who had shown me what genuine partnership felt like. I looked back at Heather, seeing clearly now how different we had always been. I am sorry, but that is not possible. I have moved on, and you should too. As if on cue, Lisa appeared at the restaurant entrance, scanning the room for me. When our eyes met, her face lit up with a smile that contained nothing but genuine joy at seeing me. I waved her over. Besides, I said to Heather, standing to greet Lisa, I have learned that sometimes the worst moments in life become the foundation for something much better than you could have imagined. The look on Heather's face, as Lisa reached our table as I introduced them briefly and politely, contained all the recognition I needed, that she finally understood exactly what she had thrown away. Today, 18 months after the accident, my life bears little resemblance to what I had planned with Heather. I lead a specialized design team focused on creating accessible spaces for rehabilitation centers across the country. I live in a modest but comfortable condo that Lisa and I purchased together, its mortgage well within our combined budget. We travel when we can, not to impress anyone with exotic destinations, but to experience new cultures and landscapes together. The money from selling Heather's ring, combined with the settlement from the accident, ultimately funded not a lavish wedding, but something far more valuable, the seed capital for my own consulting firm. The ring that was meant to bind me to a shallow relationship instead freed me to pursue work that makes a meaningful difference. Sometimes the worst betrayals open doors to our best possibilities. Have you ever had a painful experience that ultimately led you to something better? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience, and share with someone who might need to remember that their lowest moment could be preparing them for their greatest triumph. Thank you for listening, and remember, true value is not in what we own or how we appear to others, but in the courage to rebuild when everything falls apart.